So I'm Christine Kwan. I'm the director and CEO of Sotheby's Institute of Art, New York. It's a huge delight to welcome you all tonight to our first Centro and SIA Master's Degree Networking event. And I'm really amazed that it's possible with this new technology for us to connect with each other and meet each other and hopefully grow our international network. So tonight it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, one of our keynote speakers tonight, Akilah Chandler. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her. Akilah joined Christie's New York in October 2019 as Client Advisory Coordinator in the Chairman's Office. As coordinator, she supports the needs of Christie's top clients as they build their collections. Before joining Christie's, Akilah graduated from Sotheby's Institute of Art, New York with a master's in art business. Prior to Sotheby's Institute, Akilah studied fiber science and apparel design management at Cornell University, where she would eventually discover her passion for the marriage between fashion and the art market. Akilah's goal is to one day work at the intersection of both in a legal capacity. Welcome, Akilah. And before we turn it over to the keynote speakers, I'm really delighted to turn it over to Kirsten Erdmann. Kirsten, over to you.
Yeah, hi. So great that we really made it today. So welcome all to our first joint event between Centro and the Sotheby's Institute of Art, which is super exciting. So we are thrilled that two outstanding Sotheby's Institute of Art alumni accepted our invitation to be the keynote speakers. Thank you both, Akilah and Cristobal. I am e-meeting Akilah also tonight for the first time and can't wait to learn more about your inspiring career. Akilah, and to listening to both of you. Cristobal, before I read his little short bio, Cristobal is the owner of OMR Gallery, where I'm also a partner, and we have been working together for 10 years now. And I can't think of anybody else more inspiring, who is always pre, during, and post-pandemic, envisioning ambitious projects focused on a better future and innovating in the art world and in general. At a moment when society and education, as we've known them, are shifting with our world in crisis, a perfect time to reimagine everything, the art world and the future we want. Education and culture are and will remain always a driving force, which also is essential in terms of community building, collaboration, and networking. I also would like to say, gracias, thank you to all of our students who are already thinking out of the box and will hopefully engage in interesting conversations tonight and after that may lead to unexpected project ideas in collaboration and in connecting in new ways. So I would like to also briefly introduce Cristobal. So Cristobal, as I said, is the current owner of OMR Gallery, a Mexico City-based, internationally renowned contemporary art gallery, as well as the co-founder of Masa Project, a nomad design gallery in Mexico City. Cristobal is also part of the selection committee for emerging artists at Salon Acme, an emerging and alternative art fair in Mexico City. He holds a master's degree in contemporary art from the Sotheby's Institute of Art, New York City, and a bachelor's degree in product design from Central St. Martin's College of Art and Design in London. So thank you, and let's start.
Thank you. So that's absolutely wonderful. And it's really exciting to see everyone's faces. We're really excited to hear from our keynote speakers tonight. And so our first speaker will be Akilah Chandler, followed by Cristobal. So Akilah, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So just in case anyone is coming in a little late and didn't get to catch my intro, but I'm a recent graduate of SIA, graduated March of 2019. And to be honest, when I had graduated, I was 100% convinced that I would be going straight to law school. And things end up happening a little different than that. It's still the goal, but it's not quite panned out to that. So after I had graduated, there was a 6-month lull where I was unemployed, and I had a hard time figuring out if I just need to reapply for law school, if I want to go straight into just getting my feet wet in the art industry. And I was very fortunate that I was getting the interviews, I was booking second interviews, but I still was having this conflict where I really was convinced I was going to law school. I've known since I was in college that I was going. And the way that I had patterned my time at SIA versus now is I had decided that whatever classes I wasn't able to take at SIA, I was going to get experience in. So the way that I patterned my coursework was I ensured that I took an art law class, which I believe is still mandated in art business. I made sure I took my art intro to valuation, also took an art advisory course. I took artist estates and foundations. I took a museums and nonprofits class, was with the former director of art business, Jenny Gibbs. Fantastic class. I took an art pricing class because I knew that I wouldn't have time to fit in the galleries class. So that was the closest I got to that. And as I had said, when I wasn't able to take a class in, I decided to get experience in. So even though I had taken an artist foundations class, I wanted to get a little more in depth to that because I know long-term, I eventually want to go into artists, estates and foundations in the legal realm. So I ended up doing an internship at the Daedalus Foundation, which is Robert Motherwell's foundation. And that's what I had did literally right before I had decided to transition into Christie's. I also had interned for an art advisory firm, which was at Winston. And I want to say, I'm not sure how it's panned out with the pandemic, but at least every year they've taken at least like 6 to 10 SIA people. So that's been like a recurring thing that and they're also SIA alum there as well. They love SIA. So I did that. And even though I was not able to intern in a museum, I was able to take the class. And it ended up really helping me long-term because now in my role, one of our clients is in fact institutions. So that's ironic there. And when I ended up taking the role with Christie's, I started out as a temp. So this started March 17th of 2019. And then in March 17th is when Christie's had announced and when Governor Cuomo here in New York had decided to take the pandemic seriously. And they had said, we need to shut New York down. We need to reevaluate some things. So as a temp at Christie's, I was a little concerned about my employment. I didn't know how secure it was. And because my department is so small, it's made up of 6 people, and I was the entry-level temp, I made the assumption that I was automatically going to get the cut. And as things were rolling out and as more and more things became uncertain, it was a possibility that I was going to lose my job because they were cutting the interns, they were cutting the temps. But for some reason, I just never got that email that I was let go. They had made the formal announcements that there were no longer temps working at Christie's, there were no longer interns. I said, oh, surely I'm next. So I proactively started applying for other jobs, but I was fortunate that my department was very transparent with me and they told me what they knew. And that was that they didn't know anything. We were really just playing this out. We didn't know when Christie's was going to reopen. We didn't know how we had to reevaluate our bottom line. Like we really did not know. And surprisingly, despite all the cuts that happened at Christie's, and it's been very public, they took me on as a permanent employee. And because the company is now so lean, unfortunately, they did have to make so many cuts. I've now taken on more roles. So I'm not just reporting within the chairman's office. I'm not just within client advisory. I'm also reporting to the deputy chairman. And I think one thing that I will have to say in my role thus far that I've taken is I'm not resting. I'm not. I guess the best way of saying it is I'm trying to ensure that I'm not easily replaced. So I want to ensure that I'm an asset with them. So it's not just enough that I'm good at being coordinator of my department. I'm also ensuring that I'm an asset to the deputy chairman. I'm also an asset to the credits team. I'm also an asset when it comes to securing private sales. And I was very fortunate in that at SIA, we were introduced to these things. So in art law, we actually physically saw contracts. And many of the contracts that we were reviewing in class is what I'm looking at now. And no one trained me. There was never any formal training. My first day was the day of an auction. And to this day, I'm almost a year in, I still have not technically been trained, nor have I needed it because of how prepared I was to take on my role. And I guess we can go a little more in depth with the questions later on, but that's my intro so far.
Thank you so much, Akilah. And it's so helpful to hear about how you've navigated this really challenging period in the art world and in the global art world, as well as the global economy, where there's so much change and everything's in flux. That's really fantastic. I'm wondering if now is a good time to turn it over to Cristobal.
Thank you. Hearing my predecessor speak about her preparation makes me realize what a lousy student I've always been. Never much of a, I've always tried to be a little bit on the practical side, and my preparation was more from the position of the wanderer. I first moved to London after studying in Mexico, where I was born in Mexico City. And I moved to study product design in Central St. Martin's College, where the first day we arrived, our tutor from the university basically said, here's your greatest inspiration, which is called London. Go get to know it. There's workshops on the 5th and 7th floor. There's a canteen on the 3rd one. And we'll see you all at the end of the semester. And basically do whatever you think you should do. And that didn't directly take me to study rigorously. I took the advice rather to heart, and I decided to get to know the city. And with it, obviously, the art galleries. I was born in a very privileged situation where my parents are the founders of this great gallery that we now run, Kerstin and I. And thank you, Kerstin, for inviting me to say a few words. And so I was born through around art and moving it, and the gallery was my parents' life for many years, and the art is their friends, and it came very natural as a language to us, to both my brother and I. And at some point, as we flew from home, we both decided to undertake different careers, my brother as an architect and myself as a designer. And at some point, perhaps at the high peak of when we were living in London, we got a call on a rainy Sunday evening from my parents saying, we're a bit tired of this, and who is gonna take it over? And that was a bit of a shock to both of us. After some lengthy walks, I usually tend to walk to clear my mind. That was something that I got from the incredible landscape parks of London. I realized that the design world didn't quite convince me, and that the art world was more natural. So I decided to turn my point of view to study MACA in New York and to move to a new city, which for me was very exciting. And there it's where I actually got any sort of formation theoretically, not towards the side of the business, but towards the side of the concept, of the theory, of the actual conversation, the core of what was going on between these artists in different times. And that was my formal education towards art, all gearing towards the great fortune of having a place to call home since I was born. The letters OMR stands for the first letters of both my mother's and my father's last name, Ortiz Monasterio Riestra. And at some point, it was really the choice to make the call for the vocation, but to realize that it's both a very fortunate situation to be in, a gallery that is well reputed and has the credibility and the position for many years, without a doubt holding many challenges, working with family for one, and then making it your own, which has been perhaps the greatest challenge. After perhaps 8 or 10 years working parallel with my parents and with Kerstin, who started back then, it was the time that they retired about 4 or 5 years ago. which is when we decided to change into a new beautiful space that we hope you all get to come at some point. And it's when we actually took it upon ourselves to have the courage and have the willpower and have the energy to change it and to turn it into something that is now, in my eyes at least, but maybe I'm colorblind because I have it so close to heart from many years. But it has been transformed, and our entire effort, and perhaps that's where the preparation and the network from MACA and the network from London and perhaps that's the greatest key, whereby we don't, or it's my understanding that we don't reinvent the wheel. We follow on patterns and on great examples. And because I was born with this and have had the privilege of having these great mentors who are my parents, and with them other galleries from different parts of the world who were their colleagues for many years, who would take me to the side of the booth and, spill some secret about some collector, about a tip about how to make a sale, a story about an artist that they worked with from whoever, Basquiat. You get to meet all these personalities, and perhaps one of the greatest lessons that I was taught was by Sam Keller, the now director of the Baylor Foundation, who's a good friend, and also he as a director of Art Basel, he founded Basel Miami, and my parents and Sam were good friends, and they used to party quite a bit. And when I was getting a little bit older and I was starting to work at the gallery over summers, going to the fairs for commission and come back with a bit of money from Basel to London, an expensive town to live in. Sam, at some point, we were having a drink and described a very beautiful metaphor of the art world, which is perhaps a great lesson, which is the art world is a very big banquet table, a very beautifully lit, full of candles and these exotic foods, and from all over the world, and it's plentiful. There's a lot of it, and there's a lot of drinks, and there's these great wines, and there's this great mystery, and it's like if you arrive to the idea in your mind of this wonderful dinner, and it's full of people from all over the world who come from privilege to underprivilege. They come from every little corner, and perhaps it's one of the places where someone who comes from literally nothing can make a name as an artist, which in other sectors it's almost impossible. In banking, it's impossible. It's almost impossible. Or in the legal world, you need certain credentials as an artist. There's a freedom to how you can view the world from a particular position or point of view that will create something great. And this great table, which is full of people and it's all very happy and everything, it seems that there's no place to sit. You arrive and you walk around it and you're wondering, where can I sit down? Where can I make a space? And the story ends by him saying, apparently it's closed. Apparently it's like a closed circuit of people who already know each other, who are already in the loop. But there's always a place to sit in if you have something to contribute. So that was kind of eye-opening, where I realized that I didn't have to do the same thing as my parents or run the gallery the same way. And since that lesson, we've been working hard with Kerstin and a fabulous team. And that's actually the core of it. It's who you work with. It's not your ideas or your things, or even, in my opinion, your preparation, but it's who you surround yourself with and how they can take it to another level. And we're very thrilled to have a great team. And so for many years, we've been doing our thing and trying to find their voice and to remain relevant. We're a gallery of 37 years that has been reborn, and I consider we're only 4 years old, but we have the legacy of all those years behind us. And just to wrap up the circumstance where we lie now, which for me as a father of two has been perhaps the greatest, best year in many years, where I've had the chance to not have to sacrifice my family life with my work. And I've had the privilege to work from home in a beautiful place, in many actually. We've been moving around a little bit, running away from people, and also learning how this pandemic can shape and can show a way to do things differently. And I usually tend to be an optimist, and considering that the pandemic of the coronavirus was started in China, there's also an interesting Chinese proverb that relies on the language. So the Chinese character for crisis is composed of two separate characters, and one of them is problem and the other one is possibility. And I always tend to see, perhaps naively in some ways, a crisis as a very interesting possibility, where the model, how things are run, the powerful people who run them, the status quo of the, the ruling class of it, from the voices of the artists to whatever, how it's run at the present moment, changes for a generation that is younger, that is their own. And we are in a very particular time, the students of MACA and those who are present, in my opinion, because not only will our children grow up with present parents, because this is not going to be over in the next couple of years, in the next couple of months, this is going to keep on lasting. So it'll be a generation that is more conscious than ever before, because they had the privilege of growing up with both their parents in their home, as opposed to my parents as boomers who were traveling. And I don't resent them for it. I love them to bits, and they were always very present. However, it was very clear that their job and their family life were two things, right? And so now it seems quite right that not only the world heals itself like not before, and shows us a pattern that if we just stop doing stuff, it'll help us, which is a great lesson to see, I think. And we are more with family, and you have houses that become homes, and appliances that become things that make you eat things you love. And it has all these positive things to me, obviously from a privileged position, and it's tremendous, the impact, the economic, all around it. It's very, very harsh, right? But within that harshness, there is tremendous possibility to find a new voice that doesn't need to speak on the same frequency as before. And the model of what made it before crumbles and doesn't necessarily become relevant in the future. And for anyone who is studying, although it's difficult to start, I think it's also inspiring to understand that you don't have to walk the path that is most traveled, but you can literally reinvent it, because that path now, it seems to be, not only very occupied, but also not even viable. And so to that, I am thankful. And I tend to see those things. So perhaps that would be the one thing, I think: focus on your team, on who you surround yourself with, and focus on the opportunity of the crisis. That maybe it sounds cheesy, but it's always worked for me. Thank you for listening.